on your machine. When you open any random folder on your machine, I want us to be together. So you've opened any random folder on your machine, there's this line up here where it shows where you are exactly. It may differ on the appearance depending on the version you are on, but there is such. I hope we can all see something similar to this on our machines. If you can see something similar to this, you click up here, and then it will remove something like this. Then type CMD, and then click enter. And this will open the command prompt on your end. Let me unzoom and do it CMD, then I click enter. For here it won't open, it's not a folder, for that it's a system folder. So somewhere like here, I type CMD and it's supposed to open up the command prompt for me. Something similar like this. So depending on the machine you are on, that one may not work for all of you, but it works. That is the second method. So you find whichever method works for you. And now there's the third method. This is, I'm not sure if it will work on all machines, but when you go to your home, your desktop, somewhere similar to this, and right click on your mouse, you will see several things like this. It may look something like this. So you will see something similar to this. Depending on the machine you are on, you can open the terminal from here. Like that, when I click on open terminal, it can open the terminal from here. So that is the third option. But the first option is what I want us to use, but I'll show you all the options depending on your machine, and you'll find what works best for you. That is the third option. And the final option, this also again may not work on everyone's machine, but it's also an option. The button that I had shown you before, this Windows button, you click it together with X, the letter X. So if I click on both, it opens something similar to this. So for me, when it opens something similar to this, I just go to terminal like that, and it will open up the terminal for me. So those are the 4 different ways you can access your command line. So whichever one works for you, that is the one that you'll be using. I hope I've not confused anyone. The first method is just click on the start, and then you type terminal and click enter, and it will open for you regardless of what version of the computer you are on. It will open up the terminal for you. So I hope you have all been able to do that to access the command line. If anyone is stuck, they can say. I've seen some thumbs up. Jeremiah, you've been able to do that?
Yeah, it's working on my side. Mine has worked with the first option and the second one. Yeah.
Okay, that is good. So I hope everyone we are at par. I don't want to leave anyone behind, so I hope you are at par. So we said that there are different commands, but these are the basic ones. We want to see the basic ones and a few tricks to work with the command line. They're still the same ones we had shown last time. Before we get in more depth with Git, it's better if we are able to go through these commands and do a small exercise, all of us. So the first command was mkdir. So in full, this mkdir stands for make directory, just not written in full. But M, it stands for make, then dir stands for directory. So this is the first command, make directory. So making a directory is the same as creating a new folder. That is the simplest way I can explain it. It's the same way as creating a new folder. So whenever you open the command line and type mkdir, what it will do is it will create a new folder on your end. So mkdir is essentially creating a new folder. So we are going to do it practically. First, before we go to mkdir and create a new folder, there's also some other commands which are you won't use every time, but it's essential to understand. So there's this thing that is appearing. You can use the Windows, then type terminal and open terminal so that we are together on your end. See, we've seen how to open the terminal. So when you open the terminal on your end, there are different things that you are seeing. Depending on which one has opened, you can see something like this. Someone else can see something like this. So they are all the same. I know there's someone who is seeing this on their machine, and there's someone who is seeing this on their machine. These two things are the same, but they are different versions of. For example, this was on earlier versions of Windows, and this is on newer versions of Windows. So it's all the same. So regardless of what you are seeing, it's the same. You can in whatever version you are on, you can see something like this or this. This is what we call the path. So this is the path. This shows where you are on your machine. So for me, I'm in the home directory of my PC. This is the home directory of my PC. Ideally, you won't be working here on your home directory of your PC. So whenever you open up your terminal, I'd advise you go to your desktop. That is where it will be best to work on. So to see where if you have a desktop, or if your desktop appears, you just type dir. As we've seen, dir is directory. As we've seen here, directory. So this will list all the folders, all the files, everything on your machine or where you are specifically. So if I type dir, I can see the different folders on my machine. I can see a desktop, documents, downloads, and all of that. These are the different files and folders on my machine. But I've said it is best to work on your desktop. That is where you can create and do everything from there. It is best to work from there. So we've seen that this stands for path. This line that you see here, it stands for path. So when you open it, it's ideal you go to your desktop. So for me, I wanted us to go through all these commands in order. So let me just first go to the desktop, then we'll go through all those commands in order from the desktop. So, okay, then let's assume I have not even changed. Yeah, I'm at the desktop now. Let's assume we are all there. So you can see this path shows I'm in my home PC, specifically in the desktop. So I'm in my desktop. So I want us to go through all these commands in order, but you can use any of them. It doesn't have to be in order. So we said the first command is make directory. So basically this is just like creating a new folder. So mkdir, that is the command. mkdir, the command for creating a new folder. So mkdir will create a new folder. When we say mkdir, then you give it your folder, you give your folder a name. You can give it any random name. I'll give mine, let me call it sit. Yeah, so the name of my folder will be called sit. So mkdir, create a folder called sit. So I've created a folder called sit. And now the second command, after the first one command was for creating a folder. When you create a folder, even using the graphical user interface. So this is the folder I've created, but don't worry about that. If I create a new folder, so new and new folder, and let's say I name it my name. I have not opened it, I've just created the folder. So essentially, when you create a new folder, you need to switch to it or to open it. That is where this cd command comes in. It's like opening or changing to that folder. So I want to change to the folder that I've created. I'll use cd. So I'll go back to my command line and I will say cd. Then the name of my folder is sit. So I am switching to this folder called sit, and you can see my path has changed from desktop to to this sit. So it means I've switched to that folder called sit. I hope up to there we are together. That is the second command. It's the cd command. It helps you to change your directory. Now we have this third command. It's cd space then full stop or period. So we'll just use full stop, not to confuse you, but the standard name is period. So cd period. So this means going back to the previous. It's the same way with the graphical user interface. I've opened this folder. I want to go back. I just click on the arrow and it takes me back outside that specifically, or that specific folder. So I'll do the same here. When I type cd, then space, full stop. So this takes me to the previous place that I was, the previous path. So if I do that, you can see now it used to write like this. Now it just writes the desktop plainly like that. That is the second command. The second command is going back one step before or one step previously. Then we have the third command, dir. I've said that this command dir lists the directory. So this will show you all the folders or all the files that are on your machine or on your folder. So dir will do that. So if I type dir here, dir will list for me. Now on my desktop, I have the following folders: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folders. If we go to my desktop, we will see that it's true. I have those 5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only have 5 folders on my desktop. That is what dir means. It's showing all the folders on your desktop. Then sometimes when you type a lot of commands, this screen may become full, and now you want to clear the screen so that you can do more, or you can write more commands. As we've seen, the command line, you use commands to interact with the system. So I want to write more commands, but now my screen is full. All I have to type is cls. So if I type cls, it will clear this command line, because you don't want your command line to be crowded, so you want to clear it. So if I type cls and then I click on enter, it removes all the clutter, all the command that I've done before, and now I have a clean command line where I can work fresh on it. And now we have 4 more things that I need to show with the command line before we proceed. So the first thing is this code, and then space, full stop. So hopefully we all managed to install Visual Studio or VS Code. This is the icon for VS Code or Visual Studio, this icon here. So this is our default editor. This icon is the default icon for Visual Studio Code, or VS Code as it's called. This is our IDE. This is what we'll be using to write our code. So I hope you are all able to install it and no one had challenges with that. If you had challenges, we'll help you troubleshoot and do that. So typing code space period will open up that. So if I type code space and period, it will open up my Visual Studio Code. So if I click on enter, you can see it opens up my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so you can see it opens up my Visual Studio Code. So that is the command that we are using to open up our code. So we are using code space period or full stop, and it will open up your code. Okay, so apart from typing code and period, this full stop or this period, let me just say full stop, it has a lot of uses with the command line. As we continue, you will explore them more. So for instance, if I want to open up my notepad, I just type notepad space, then that full stop, and it will open up my notepad. I already opened it, but it will open up my notepad. So this period or full stop, it has a lot of uses with the command line. You will explore that. It has a lot of uses with the command line. You will explore more of them, but this for opening the IDE is the important one. The other ones, you'll just know them for advanced level of working with the command line. There are two other things I also want us to see about working with the VS Code, with the command line. The first one is the arrow up. So on your keyboard, there's the arrow up. So on the command line, the arrow up takes you to the previous commands. So if I want to open VS Code again, if I want to do something that I've done before, instead of me typing again, I just click on this arrow up and it shows me what I had written up before. If I click on it again, it takes me to whatever I had written before. If I click on it again, it shows me the commands that I've just written, all of them, it shows me. So that is the arrow up. So instead of having to always retype what we've done, so if I've said make directory called test and I want to create another directory called test2, instead of me typing mkdir again, I just click on arrow up, then add the number 2 at the end, and it does the same thing. So the arrow up shows the previous commands that you have written when you click on the arrow up. So you know the arrow up on your keyboards. So the arrow up, it shows the previous commands that you had written on your machines. Secondly, we have what is called tab completion. So tab completion, there's this arrow, this button below the escape. It's called the tab button. Sometimes it is drawn 2 arrows pointing the opposite direction on your keyboard. It depends on the keyboard, but it's just the tab button. It's written either tab or 2 arrows pointing the opposite directions. So this tab button, is what enables autocomplete when working with the command line. So I don't have to type the whole command. So for example, I want to change to my desktop. If I type CD, then letter D, instead of me completing typing the name desktop, I just click on tab and it auto completes depending on the options it has. If desktop is the only option, then it will autocomplete to desktop. If the other things that start with the letter D, it may not autocomplete exactly. It will give you the option. So if I click on tab again, it goes to the second option. If I click on tab again, it goes to the other option. So because I have different options that start with the letter D, so if I autocomplete for me, if I let's see dir, how many have the letter D? I have desktop, documents, downloads, and database DB client. So you see, so for me, if I try to autocomplete, since I have this many things that have, yes, yes. Okay, so since I have these several things that have the letter D, so if I use the autocomplete, the tab, the autocomplete tab autocompletion, it will give me the different things. So if I type desk, because it's only desktop that is spelled like that, and I click on tab, it will know it's desktop that I wanted to finish, and it will autocomplete desktop for me. So that is the third thing about the command line. We've seen the arrow up, we've seen the basic commands, and we've seen the tab completion, which are important to know as we continue to work with the command line, Git, and so forth. So it is important to know that. Now, this I want us to understand depending on the machine you are on, which is very important. You need to understand. If your command line, when you open it, it writes command prompt, you need to be aware of that. If you open it and it writes either PowerShell or Windows PowerShell, you need to be aware of that. And if you open it and it writes something else, that means you're using a bash type of terminal. You need to be aware of that. And if you are aware of which command line you are using, it will make it easier for you to understand the commands or to research the different commands. Most of the commands for this command line are the same, except a few. So for instance, in command prompt, that's why I've said that you note the difference of which one you are working on. On command prompt, if I want to create a new file, I use the command echo like this. Echo. Let me go to my desktop so that we can work from there. So if I want to create a new file, a file, for example, a Word document, a PowerPoint, a HTML file, whatever kind of file I need to create, when I'm using on my machine, if my machine is using the command prompt, if you see for you as it's writing the command prompt, for you, you will use echo. So I use echo dot, then the angled bracket, and I type the name of the file that I'm creating. So for instance, I'm creating a Word document called test.txt or .powerppt for PowerPoint, or doc for Word document, or HTML for HTML document. Regardless of whatever type of document I am creating, I use echo. As long as my machine uses the command line, I will use echo. It is important to note that difference because this command differs depending on the command line that your machine offers. So for instance, if I create a test.html using echo, if I go to my desktop, you will see I have a test.html file that I've created. So if on your machine you're using the command line, the command prompt, you use echo to create a new file. Okay. If on your machine you are using PowerShell, this is how it looks. It has either written PowerShell or Windows PowerShell. If your machine is written like that, you will use the following command: capital N, small e, W, then dash, item. Or let's go first to desktop. That I want to do all this from there. So you use new dash item and then you call the name of your file. So for example, I say let me call it, let me see, let's call it Paul .ppt or Paul dot, let's say Paul dot doc. So I want to create a Word document with the name Paul, and I use new item Paul dot doc. If I go to my desktop, you'll see there's a new Word document that has appeared that is called Paul. So if your machine uses the PowerShell, you will use that command. That is the only different command that you need to know depending on your machine. And finally, if you're using Mac OS or Linux, you will be using touch. And if you're using this Mac OS or Linux, that means you are familiar with these commands, because for Linux, you use the command line a lot. So when using the command line, you become familiar with this command line. So for here, you use touch. So touch, then the name of the document you're creating. So let's say Brian.ppt. So I'm creating a PowerPoint document called Brian. If I go to my desktop, you will see now we have a PowerPoint document called Brian. So those are the different types of command lines that, depending on the machine you are on, you will encounter them. So I don't know which one should we be using, which machine are we all averagely most people are using, so that
But
we can, yeah, yes.
all these commands are similar on either on Bash or the CMD or PowerShell. They are the same except the one for creating documents and other files.
Yes, except the one for doing that, the rest are the same. So I wanted to understand which one we'll be using a lot, so that we are all using the same command instead of all having different commands. So that's why I wanted to show you the difference, so
Uh,
that we can see which one we will all be using. Because the other, it's apart from that one for creating the other ones that will be different, but that is the most common one, because I want to give a small exercise to ensure we are all familiar with the command line.
so I'm assuming we had installed Bash.
Mhm.
So we'll be using now the Bash for Git and connecting it to the GitHub.
Yes, we'll be using Bash for connecting to Git and GitHub, but the commands will still work on either of them.
So,
So,
so we
for
just
Bash, sometimes it can
uh,
be difficult.
it has
Yes,
it can be difficult in this sense.
in the sense that with Bash, for instance, if I type, uh, there are some commands that don't work on Bash. Uh, for instance, if I type CLS to clear on Bash, it does not. It will tell you the command is not found. For here, you have to
Um,
type something like clear, for it to clear. Uh, to list the directories, you can use ls, and it will list for you the directories and so forth. You see, the commands over time, some of them, some small parts will change. So that's what I
okay,
want to understand which one we are more comfortable with.
maybe CMD, because all the other versions from Windows 10 to back have CMD, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they have CMD, yes.
That will be a good option for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
for the
was
rest.
also asking
Mm-hmm.
the commands. Is it possible we get a whole list? Anywhere where we can get the list of the commands
If you just
just
type
by
help,
going through them? Help, okay.
yeah, it will give you the list of all the commands.
All the commands.
Yeah, that you will use. Let me
Okay.
unzoom. So I've just typed help, and you can see it has given me all these commands. So these are the different commands that I'll be using, or we will be using on the command prompt. So for instance, this for command prompt, when you type help, it gives you a small explanation of the command. So for instance, a command like assoc displays or modifies file extensions or association. We have cd, displays the name of or changes the current directory. We see CLS, it clears the screen. CMD is just a new instance of the Windows command interpreter. We have copy, we have DEL for deleting, and so forth and so forth. So when you type help, it will give you the list of the commands.
Okay.
So let us use command prompt since all the versions
Quick
have command
question.
prompt.
Quick question before you go on. Why are we using the desktop instead of the other directories? Like for me, it's admin,
Mm-hmm.
and for yours is home PC. Why don't you use either of those?
Okay, the reason we're using we're not using either of those is, let me go back to my home PC. If I open the location of my home PC, it's here. Okay, and this is what it's showing on my machine. And the home PC also stores some very sensitive files. So for instance, if I say for it to list the files that I have, some of these files here are these ones that have some dot in front of them. These are hidden files, and these are very important files that have some function in relation to whatever we are doing on our machines. So the reason I avoid creating this using the home PC or the admin is to avoid interfering with these sensitive files that are important. But you can do it there. There's no problem. I just prefer the desktop where you can delete, you can add, you can experiment, but you can create it on your home PC or admin. It's okay. There's no problem.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Thank you. So up
Bobby,
to there, I hope
just
we
a
are.
minute.
Yes.
Yeah, there is something you had tried to explain to us earlier on. You were
Mm-hmm.
saying when you want to open, is it a file or something? We were to type on the CMD.
Mm-hmm.
We were to type code and then space and then full stop.
Yes.
And then you are trying to open for us the VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
You also tried to open for us the Notepad.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to open the Word and it has refused. I don't know what does it open something specifically, or you can open anything, any file?
It can't open all of them. There are a few of them it can open, others it can't open. Like Word, it can't open because Word is an editor. It's a different kind of editor, so you can't open it the same way you open the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I hope we are together about the command line so that I can give us an exercise that we do. And the important part about the exercise is the commands that you will be using these commands. Let me show you the final command before then I give you the exercise. So we've typed help and we've seen all these commands. So when you type help, you'll be able to see the different types of commands. So that is a new command. When you type help, it will give you different commands to use. So one of the commands that it gives you is DEL. which deletes one or more files. There are others like rm, which removes. That one works for bash, rm, and so forth. There are different ones depending on whatever you're using. So for git bash, for command prompt, we'll use del. So for instance, let me go to my desktop. I've created a lot of files. I can use dir to see the files that I have on my desktop. I have brian.ppt, I have paul.doc, I have seat, I have all this. Let's say I want to delete test. So del, then the name of the file that you want to delete. So I want to delete the folder called test. I just type del, then test, and then it will ask me, are you sure? Then I type the letter Y and enter, and it deletes for me this test. So if I type dir again, it's not supposed to appear for this one. For command prompt to bring an issue, let me use this. Yeah. So for command prompt, you won't be able to delete using this command. It will give some issues because there is something that one has to do. But for PowerShell, when you use RM stands for remove. It removes. So that last part of the test. For this one, this command for deleting, I'll show you how to go around it, and we will be able to work with it. I'll show you how to go around it. For now, let's skip it. It's a process to set it for it to allow the DEL to work on your end. So we will work around it, and I'll show you. For now, what I want us to do is up to here. So this is what we've done. You create a new directory on your desktop, and you will call it test. You'll call this directory test. You navigate to test and create a new file called test.txt. Then you open this file using VS Code, and you make some changes and save the file and close it and navigate out of the test directory. So basically, I want to see the command that you will use to do this part up to the end. That is what I want to see. So you create a directory called test, you navigate to the test directory, get a new file, open VS Code and make some changes and navigate out. So this is what I want us to do. Yeah, like that. I hope it is visible. I want us all to be able to do this on our machines, and then we see if we are at par. And if there's anyone who is stuck or left, you can unmute or raise your hand and we'll be able to assist you. Let me mute, then we continue.
On CMD, you said we use echo for creating.
Yes, for command prompt, we are using echo. Then like this, for command prompt, we'll use like this to create a file. Echo space full stop then angled bracket, and then the name of your file. Then you put the name of file, and then you put a dot, then the type of document you're creating. If it's a text file, if it's a doc, if it's a PowerPoint, you just put a full stop, then the extension for your file. So for instance, in this case, we are creating something like this, test.txt. So this is how the command will look like.
Bobby, if you go back to the screen containing the instructions. Okay.
At 8:35, then someone will show us an example of how they've done it. Then we proceed. That will be okay. I hope we've all been able to do that. I'd like someone to volunteer to show us how they've done it before we proceed.
You mean to share the screen of what they have done?
Yes, for them to share the screen for what they've been able to do. Let me stop presenting.
Mine looks something like that. I don't know if you guys can see it. That's how mine looks like.
Expand the screen, please.
Is that size okay?
Yes.
Better.
So, okay.
Okay. Would you mind explaining the process you've done?
So from okay. This first one, this one.
Yeah.
That is how I made the folder called test by writing mkdir. I got test. So it gave me this one as the output. It showed that I had a folder called test at 8:29. Then from there, I was able to, in this folder, I was able to create what is this called? This file name by the name text. So I'm using a PowerShell. So you said the command is this one.
Yes.
So I wrote it down and it gave me this output. So that means I have that folder inside this file inside this folder. So this one. So I was to open VS Code. I did open VS Code. Let me see. Yeah, so when I open VS Code, it is here. You guys can see it. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is here for VS Code, the one I've opened. Now, to go back to my initial line, I use this line, which is this one.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that's how I've done it.
Thank you very much and good work. You've also been able to adapt for PowerPoint and be able to do it the exact way for PowerPoint. As I explained, for that part, it's different depending on the command line that it gives you on your machine. I'd like to see someone who has used command prompt. Yes, I can see a hand is raised. Brian?
It's basically the same. So are you able to see the screen? So what I did was the same. My directory.
Please expand your screen.
Control plus
The
plus.
wording.
Is it any better?
Use Control plus plus to expand that command prompt.
I'm trying to, but it's not magnifying.
And try Command Shift, Control Shift, then plus plus plus,
Control Shift.
then plus plus the plus 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 to see if it will expand.
Now.
It's not, but it's okay. For me, I can. It's okay. I can still just explain. We will do it before we continue. Just explain what you've done.
Yeah. So what I did was make directory test.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I created the directory, I went ahead and cd create directory. It changed directory, sorry, to test. And then once that was there, I typed in echo dot the arrow test.txt. And then after that, I went to code dot, and then it opened the VS Studio.
Yes.
And then that was that. And then after that was change directory back to desktop.
Yeah, to desktop. Yeah, which you have not done yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. For his screen, it's okay. I'll do an example for both. There's no problem. Thank you very much. I hope we are all okay up to there. I hope I've not left anyone behind. If you've been left behind, you can raise your hand or unmute. Okay, thank you. I'm seeing thumbs up.
What's the command for creating in Bash?
Touch.
Touch. Okay.
Yeah. I'll okay, let me share my. So let's start with that bash that has been asked. So for bash, if I want to create a new, let me first clear my terminal. So for bash, if I want to create a new file, I just say touch, then the name of my file. I can call it, I hope that is, I can call it test.txt. And then when we go to my desktop, you will see we have that test.txt file. It appears there. So with bash, that is what you use. The git bash or whatever bash you are using, depending on your OS. Then for command prompt, as we've seen on Jessica's screen, for PowerShell, we use new -item, and then you type the name of your file. So for this one, I'll call it index dot. You can give it now the dot, and the letters that you write at the end are the extensions of your file type. So for instance, where do I have documents? Let's just go with here. So if I want to view the extensions of my file, so for instance, the extensions for these files is .exe, 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 .msi. Let me go to my desktop. We open something like this. So you can see the extension for this one is .py for Python, .txt, .md for Markdown, .yaml for YAML. So that is what the file extension type. That is what we are typing here. So for instance, if I want index.py for a Python file, I just type .py, and it will create a file with the Python extension for me. That is what it will do for me. So if I click on enter and we go to my desktop, we will see a Python file, an index.py. You can see the Python symbol there. So I've created a Python file using new item. I'll delete it also. We also now go back to the command prompt. And for this one, I want to create, use echo space full stop, then the angle bracket or the greater than sign, but it's called the angle bracket. So we use the angle bracket, and then you type the name of your file. So if your file is called, let's use sit.doc, since it's let's say it's a Word document, and you click on enter, it will create that sit.doc Word file. So you can see it down here, sit.doc. Now for the remaining, the few remaining minutes, I didn't want us to go in depth with Git without understanding those basic things about the command line. So for the few minutes, I want us to see what Git commands are. And as we are going, we won't cover a lot of them, just the first few basics. So don't worry. Today's class was more about making sure we are all at par with the command prompt before we explore Git in detail, because Git has a lot of commands, but there are those that we call the core Git commands. These are the commands that we will be using a lot. They're called the core Git commands. So as we explore these Git commands, first of all, I'd like to make sure we all have a GitHub account and we all have Git installed on our machines. I hope there's no one left behind in terms of that we all did that. We are all able to install Git or have a GitHub account. If you have not been able to do any of that, you can unmute or raise your hand. I'm seeing thumbs up. So I don't want to leave anyone behind. So I hope we are at par in terms of that. It's okay, Catherine. There's no problem. I'm asking if we all have Git installed, and if we all have Git installed and a GitHub account. That is what I'm asking. Do you all have that before we proceed? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. So I assume we all. Thank you. I assume you all have a GitHub account and a Git app installed. So this was the process for installing the Git account. You were to go to this website, git-scm.com, and you download Git depending on your operating system. There were further instructions there. So this is how the website looked like. For Windows, you were supposed to click here on this screen where it's written download for Windows. This is how it appears. And then we download for Windows. And then we were to choose the bits for Windows. So if you are on 32-bit or 64-bit, and we showed the way to see which bit of Windows you are on, and so you install from there. You install the same, everything the same. You download the Git app, you install it, everything. You click next, except for this part where you change. You don't click on let Git decide. You click it to override, and it will write main for you. And then the rest is next till the end. We were able to do that. After installing Git, you need to configure this Git. So when configuring Git, the first step was first seeing if Git is really installed. Or whichever app you're trying to confirm if it is installed, you just need to check the version of the app to confirm if the app is installed. So for Git, we were using git -- space -- version to confirm that confirm that Git has been installed. So it will show you the latest version of Git. And we were also able to set our Git username and our Git email. We said that we were using the username for our GitHub account. So the username that we set on our GitHub account, the username that we set on our GitHub account, that is what we were using. And the email that we used to set up our GitHub accounts, that is what we were using in this part. So you are using Git space config space -- global space user.name and then quotation marks, and then you put your GitHub username. So for my case, the account that I created, the username was Bobby254. So that was the username that I was using. The command was git space config space -- global space user.name user.name, then space quotation marks, then your username, and then you close the quotation marks like that. That is the command that we are using to set up your username and to set up your email. Now that I've shown you the arrow up trick when working the command line, you can just click the arrow up, then you just clear up to this point. Then it's user.email, and then you input the email that you used.
What's the arrow up trick again?
Okay, the arrow up. Let me finish this, then I show you. .com. Yeah. So the arrow up is you on your keyboard. They're called directional keys. This one, the arrow up, is the sideways, the left, the right, and the down. They're those keys. So the arrow up, when you click on it, it goes to whatever command you had written before. So instead of you having to retype the same command, you just use the arrow up, and it shows you the commands that you've written before. So like you see for me, when I go up, it shows me all the commands that I've written. You see, if I go down, it shows me up to the latest. So it's the arrow up. So you just use the arrow up. Instead of retyping the command, the same command, you use the arrow up, and it shows you the command that you had written before.
Okay.
Yeah, so up to there, I hope we are okay. So as I've said, we used our GitHub. I've said we use our GitHub username and the email that we use to register for GitHub. In the last class, when I was showing you the basics of GitHub, I forgot to mention that GitHub counts your contribution. So when we are working with GitHub in more depth as we continue, there are these commands that you will be using when you'll be pushing your code to your repos or to your GitHub accounts. It will be counting your contributions. So it will show you like green dots on here. So for instance, we are in January 2025. It will show you for January 2025. Today you have one green dot, and it will be able to do that. So it can help you keep track of whatever you are working on with GitHub. Second thing here, it also shows the years. For example, since when you open that GitHub account. So you can see this is an account that we opened in 2025. So it's showing here, joined last week, and here you can see it's only showing the year 2025. It's showing the year, only the year 2025. As so, as I said, I said it once before that with GitHub you can tell someone I've done this, this, and this for 1 year. It will be like a portfolio. So you'll be able to show them that I've had this account for 2 years and I've been. You can see the green dots. I've been doing it consistently for the period of maybe 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, depending on how long you've had your account. Or start actively using Git and GitHub. You can use this to keep track, do daily practices on your account, and so forth, to keep you motivated. So we were just recapping Git config. We've done that. So up to there, we are at par. And to confirm that you've done the right thing, we said you use git config -- list. -- list, and it will show you a bunch of commands or a bunch of information, and this information now it is loading. This information will be able to show you. I chose my username and my user email. After, when working with Git, Apologies for that. My net had just cut. Let me switch to different networks. Okay, I'm now back. I was explaining about Git init. So we were doing installation setup and configuration. But for today, these are the two commands I need us to understand. They are very important. I'd say that git init, when you use this command, what it does is it initializes an empty repository. And what it means by setting up an empty repository is that it's setting up the necessary structure for Git to start tracking changes in your machine or on your project. So this init, it is initializing this empty repo. What it means when it says it has initialized an empty repo, it means it has created a hidden file. Let me show you the file. So when you show the hidden files, you can see a file called .git. So any file that has a dot in front, that means it's a hidden file. So a .git file is created. So this is what happens when you initialize a repository. So it creates a .git file. That is what it essentially means. And this file is what creates the structure for Git to start tracking changes in your project. Even if it's a new project, even if it's an empty repo, when you use Git init, now it sets up with the Git that you had installed. Now it starts to track the changes. So it creates this folder, which is a hidden folder called Git, and this has the mechanism, metadata that configuration for Git to work with your project or with your machine. So that is what Git init does. It does not add any new files to your machine or so, but it does that. So that is the first command. You won't, it's the same as the configuration. You won't have to use it that often, but it's good to know it. And the second command for today will be git clone. So essentially, git clone, we said that with most git commands, you have to type git before it. So you have to type git before it. So these commands of git, there are many of them. If I type something like git help, it lists the same way that help lists the command in the command prompt. So git help, you see we've typed git help. So git help gives you the list of the commands. So we have clone and init, which are the ones we are having a look at today. There are many more: add, move, restore, remove, bisect, differentiate, grep, log, show status. All of this, we won't have to use all of these commands frequently, but it will be good to cover them. So instead of covering them all at once and confusing you, it's better off if we go sequentially. So we've seen about git init, which creates an empty git repository or reinitializes an existing one. So I want us to look at git clone. So by the definition of the term itself, cloning is creating a copy. That is the layman definition of git clone. So cloning is creating a copy. So that is the definition of is the process of generating a identical copy. So whenever we are saying git clone, we are creating a copy. Basically, that's what we are doing. We are creating a copy. So we've seen we have a local repository and
Hello, Bobby, please.
repository.
What's wrong with your sound? I can barely hear you. Is something wrong with your sound,
Of the
please?
project on your machine. While the remote repository is the folder or repository on the cloud, which is on GitHub, on either of the other platform. So to make it come from the remote one to your machine, we have to clone it, have a copy of what is on the cloud to our machine. So we are using this git clone to create a copy of this repository on our machine. So it's just like downloading whatever we have on our cloud onto our machines, so that we can work with it on our machines or contribute to it or modify it and so forth and so forth. So like the other commands, let's say you see with git help or git clone, you just type that git help or git clone, click enter, or the other commands that we have covered. You just type the command alone and click enter and it works. With git clone, you have to type after you've typed the name git clone, you have to have a URL to add there. So the URL will come from your GitHub account. So for instance, we had the last class we had created the test repo, and on this test repo, we wanted to clone it on our machine. So on the test repo, we had the URL for the test repo. I had said that we copy the URL for the test repo. So we were copying it using this one. So for those ones who were in that class can remember, we were copying that. We'll redo it shortly, and then we were coming and typing git clone, and then pasting the link. So this is the URL to our repo. So that is how git clone works. You type the command. We've seen git init. Now we are saying git clone. So with git clone, you just type git clone and then the URL for the repository. And then it will clone the repository to your machine. So like you've seen, we've typed git clone And then this is the URL to the repository called test repo on Git. So to do what I've just done, you just go to your GitHub. I hope you can remember the way we create a new repository. There's this plus icon up here. You click on it, then you click a new repository, and then it takes you to a page with where you input the details for the new repository. Let it load up. Okay. Okay, so it has loaded up. So this is the process of creating a new repository. It was on the document that I had shared. The process of creating a new repository, when you go further down along, it had shown the process of creating a new repository. So if you don't get it, you can go through the document. So you just click on the plus icon. When you click on the plus icon, you click on new repository. It takes you to this page where you put the details of your repository. So that is where we are. You input the details of your repository. We had called it test repo the last time. So we'll still call it, we find a new name for it. So we call it demo, and then you can put it public or private. We were able to see that. So when it's public, anyone who knows your GitHub username can access this repository. When it's private, I cannot see it. It's only you, the owner of the account, who can access it, who can clone it, who can do anything with it. I cannot do it. So for us, for this, since the demo, we have a public repository. We have what is called a README file. This is the file that explains what the repository is about, what this project is about. So that is what the README file does. We will see the rest later. So for now, we just want to create the repository. And then when you create, it takes you to this page. This page has a lot of things, but what we are interested in right now is this part where it's written quick setup. If you've done this kind of thing before, that is what we're interested in. So we have HTTPS, SSH, or something else, but we're interested in HTTPS and this URL. So we go to this URL. At the end, there are two boxes where we are copying this repository. So we click on it and we have copied it. So we go back to our command line. And then now here we type git clone, and then we paste that link for that repository. So git clone HTTPS for that link for that repository, and you click on enter. And it will tell you cloning into demo warning, you appear to have cloned an empty repository. So essentially, we have created a new empty folder on our GitHub account, and we have been able to clone that empty folder onto our machines. So that is what git clone essentially, for now, that is what we've done. We've created an empty folder and copied that folder from GitHub to our machines. Up to there, we are okay. Yes, I'm seeing thumbs up. Is everyone okay up to there? Yes, yes. Yeah. Is there anyone who has been left behind? Is there anyone who has been left behind? Any questions? You can unmute if you have any questions or if you have been left behind or if there's anything to
Bobby.
recap on. Yeah.
Bobby, I didn't see my
Yes.
URL.
Jen, you're
after
trying to
creating
see.
the repository, yes, after creating the repository or the repo, I didn't see my URL. I don't know.
Can you share your screen?
No, I'm using the phone. I've not connected the laptop.
Okay. Let me open GitHub here on the phone.
He can also show his phone. Let him share so that we see.
Yeah, you can share your screen if it's okay.
No, I'm saying I'm using the phone for the what, for connecting, and then the laptop,
Oh,
I'm using it to have opened the GitHub on the laptop.
okay. Let me share my phone. I show you the process. Hope you can see the screen on my phone. So this is one of my GitHub accounts. I want to create a new repository. So for this one, I switch to desktop site so that the screen is bigger. And then I'm now able to see this arrow down. I create a new repository. So I've switched to desktop site so that I can see it the same way as it would appear on my machine. So here I just have to zoom, everything the same way I will see on a laptop. So here I can create the repository name. So for instance, demo repo or just demo. And then I can put it public or private. I can add a README. I can put the rest. And then I create the repository. So when I create the repository, it will show me the same way it was showing on my machine. So there's this line where quick setup. If you've done this kind of thing before, you can see there's a URL inside there. So at the end of the URL, there are some boxes. These boxes, there are two squares inside each other. So I click on this one that has the link. I click on it, and it will tell me something when I click on it. You see, copied to clipboard. So I have copied the URL for that repository to my clipboard. Now I can proceed to my terminal where I will just type git clone, and then I add the repository, and it will be able to clone the repository for me. We'll be able to do it with you practically on the next class before we proceed. So if it's possible, you join with your laptop on that class. Okay.
All right.
Any person with a question or anybody who has been left behind? I see time has gone. We are all up to par with whatever we have been able to cover today. I believe so. In case you're stuck, don't hesitate to reach out. So I hope we are at par for today. Now, I think we have now understood the command line, so we'll be able to go into now Git seriously, because that was the key part. If you understand how to work with the command line with Git, the rest will become easier. So thank you for